My background is in the music industry. I was honored by the Songwriters Hall of Fame, Grammy-nominated on Moby's album last night. I'm really a creative person. I much rather take someone completely unknown and try to make them famous. And I went to over 60 shows and came back with one person, and we turned a girl named Stefani Germanotta into Lady Gaga. Snoop Dogg said, I got 1 billion streams and made less than $45,000. What's the signal? That people are unhappy. That's the signal.
You're going to completely change the streaming space for both brands and consumers.
We're paying people to live an inspired life for things that they're currently doing for free.
Welcome back to the Money Signal podcast from Main Street to Wall Street. Today I'm joined by a legend of her own, Wendy Starland.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, Wendy. It is an amazing honor to have you on the Money Signal podcast.
Thank you.
So I will read several interesting statistics for you because the Money Signal podcast really is a podcast where we try to examine and analyze signals, and the signals come in different shapes and forms. So while my co-host Peter, who's not here with us today, talks more about and focuses more on finance and investing, I love focusing the signals from entrepreneurs and their journey and what they understand as a signal and how they actually first saw the signal and how they acted on it. So I'm going to read to you a very interesting statistic that's very suitable and I think will help us with a proper introduction for you, which is the music industry last year in 2025 generated $22 billion just last year. That is 11 times more than what it generated back a decade ago. And very interestingly, only 30% of that was left for everything else but streaming. That said, that revenue that we just mentioned was primarily made up of streaming. So between revenue and culture, your spirit journey and path has actually brought both the music culture and your background into music, as well as actually entering into that future or present space into streaming, app, and innovation. So I'd love to hear more now that I've shared this opener.
Yeah, I mean, my counter would be how much of that 22 billion actually went to the people who allowed that to be possible, the artist. How much of the 22 billion is in the artist's pockets versus all of the middlemen in between?
I don't have that statistic, but actually an interesting one that I found was that every day there are 4,000 new artists that come up on
much more. Oh, on stage or
stage?
I see. They're like literally over, 100,000 new uploads to Spotify every day
by new and emerging artists who are looking for a brighter future and obviously sharing their talent with the world.
Absolutely.
So I want to start off by, and I don't want to introduce you myself because I feel like I wouldn't do you justice. I mean, your experiences ranges from literally musical discovery of celebrities and famous song writers and singers to yourself being an incredibly famous and celebrated songwriter and singer, to then an award winner and also an entrepreneur now entering the AI space, which will absolutely change the way that musical artists are are transacting in the world. Do you mind telling us a bit about yourself in your own words and
Sure.
your background?
Absolutely. My background is in the music industry, as you mentioned. I started off as an artist. I was discovered by Maceo Parker. I put a band together. We got a deal with Universal Music Group. I toured around the world for 3 years. I was honored by the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Grammy-nominated on Moby's album last night. Came back to the U.S. after, touring, and but still played some shows in the U.S. as well, opening for Jack White, Sheryl Crow. Did some shows alongside the Foo Fighters and other people like that. And writing. I mean, I've written for countless amounts of artists and across various genres. And I've always loved that because it allowed me to express myself in lots of different ways. Instead of sticking to one style and one thing, I could explore and, do songs from stuff for the Wu-Tang Clan or, Moby or Lady Gaga. And so basically I worked with a producer who is a multi-platinum producer. And I said, it's great, writing for all these big names, but I'm really a creative person. I much rather take someone completely unknown and try to make them famous. And so he said, okay, well, we'll start working on the album and go out and find me somebody under the age of 25 who could be the female equivalent to the lead singer of the Strokes, who were huge at the time. Someone who's edgy and bold, who you can't take your eyes off of. And I went to over 60 shows and came back with one person. And we turned a girl named Stefani Germanotta into Lady Gaga. And that was an incredible process. She is so supremely talented and hardworking and brilliant and savvy and all of the great things, determined. She's really special, and we're so happy that the world agreed. And yeah, from that experience, I really learned a lot about what it takes to build a brand, because Lady Gaga is a brand. And so I, got a call, and he said, Wendy, I've been getting calls from the chief marketing officers of people like Home Depot, Estee Lauder, Fanatics, and they all have the same problem. They're sitting on over 100 million opt-in users, and none of their traditional means of advertising are working for them anymore. So they said, there are no commercials on Netflix or Apple TV, and a banner ad or logo slap on digital or social media. No one's clicking on it anymore. They may have fallen for that 15 years ago, but right. Nobody's engaging with it. So can you build us a platform in music where music is the hook and everyone will engage with music regardless of whether or not our brand is there? And if you do, we will distribute it to our subscriber base and have activations and all these kinds of fun things for people to engage with on the platform, and then have the customer journey and see what's working and use it kind of as an advertising tool, but not this thing where you're forced to watch a commercial. It's something that's fun and engaging, and contests and meet and greets and all kinds of cool experiences. And so he said, okay. And he called me up and said, Wendy, music is free. It's 0.004 cents per stream. So literally Snoop Dogg, said last year, I think it was last year, I got 1 billion streams and made less than $45,000. $45,000. I mean, when was the last time you did 1 billion of anything? You know what I mean? 1 billion times breathing. I mean, it's just crazy. And so I said, well, there were hurdles we needed to overcome, and there were points of acceleration that really turned her into a global brand. And so I went through it with him. Together we automated those processes, over 80 different engagement functions, and created pop culture's first super app.
Wow.
And what do I mean by super app? I mean, like, if Spotify, Amazon, Instagram, Etsy, and Ticketmaster had a baby, that's what I'm talking about. And what differentiates it besides being a one-stop shop? It uses AI to basically analyze. So you sign up for free, just like you do on Instagram or whatnot. And let's say I posted a song or a video. It could analyze the song or video, extract all of the relevant kind of information, and then automate the correct eyeballs to that through our brand partners. So let's say you're a beauty influencer and you're showing, some lipstick and mascara, whatever. Our AI would analyze the video and maybe send 150 million eyeballs from, for example, Sephora or Estee Lauder or, the makeup brands who are relevant, so that you're not only getting mass promotion without needing to pay for it, you're also getting the correct eyeballs, curated, data-driven mass promotion, and then we as the platform pay you 70% of all streaming and advertising revenue. So again, streaming revenue on other platforms is 0.004 cents per stream. We take multiple different revenue streams, merchandise, advertising, meet and greets, all kinds of revenue streams, put them in a pot, and then take 70% of the gross and just give it to the content creators, because that's what I think people deserve. I think the power has got to go back into the hands of the people who created this business, who are creating value, inspiration, all of the things that make music and media in general magic. And I'm giving the power back to the people. I just think that, and do I think we deserve 30% for putting this all together? Sure, I do. But I think they deserve 70%. And so I'm on a mission to monetize media and basically employ millions and millions of people through AI, because we see now AI is taking jobs away. What was it last week? It was 370,000 jobs in government, over 30,000 jobs in Amazon. AI is replacing so many jobs. Here on MusicSoul, we give you a job by using AI for data matching, mass promotion, discovery, and allow you to live an inspired life. And that's my goal.
That's so inspiring to hear. Although I'm not a musician myself, I have always been fascinated by these statistics because, again, I'm behind the data and I love understanding more about each industry and the statistics behind it. So it sounds like MusicSoul will not only revolutionize the experience for the actual artists themselves, but it will also be almost like a neck-to-neck competitor with some of the largest streaming services out there, because you will, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you will be pushing out new artists and existing artists into a larger pool, obviously more eyeballs, and they actually get to keep that money to themselves, right? So as you mentioned, Snoop Dogg, that's a crazy statistics. I had no idea that for a billion streams, you only get $45,000. As an artist, how does that motivate you to create?
I mean, I'd also want to clarify that you do not have to be an artist to be on MusicSoul to make this 70%. So let's say that you were an Instagram influencer. Let's say you were a beauty influencer. Again, the AI and let's say it was a lipstick. You're trying to show this new lipstick on your social media and trying to sell it for that brand. You could have a video of you trying on the lipstick. The AI will analyze. They'll say, oh, wow, this person is interested in beauty. It's a lipstick, da da da. It will then analyze the crowd of people that this is being pushed out to through our brand partners, and then pluck the right eyeballs from that crowd and automate it to your video so that you know that the right eyeballs are seeing your content. And does it mean that everyone's going to stick around? No, but the ones that you can capture and keep, you will be retaining 70%. So it's not just for artists, although we do have the music license to all the music on the internet. So all artists who've ever released a song before will be preloaded onto MusicSoul on their profile with all their songs and their videos, so that it's not a hassle. It's just they can go and start earning instantly.
That's amazing. Will that also apply to podcasters too?
It sure will.
Wow.
It sure will. And think about, like, let's say, here's something really cool. I think it's really cool. You know, my mom, for example, she's not going to share a lot about herself and her own experience online, too many personal things. But maybe she would share like a John Mayer song, and then someone else would share it, and someone else would share it. And then let's say someone purchases a John Mayer t-shirt. Each person in that chain will receive a commission off that t-shirt at varying rates depending on how close they are to the sale. But people who are actively sharing and engaging will make approximately around $1,000 to $1,600 per month just by sharing someone else's content that results in a sale. So you can imagine how engagement, and this is also how we know, like, we have lots of, you know, human verification technology to ensure that, you know, we keep out any bots and things of that nature, because we're not just patting you on the back and giving you a like, we are giving you dollars and cents to show our appreciation.
Wow. And for new artists, say if I'm an emerging artist, I could basically just come in and immediately, in a way, I would think of it as be discovered, right? I have my own audience, which is not driven by any specific type of algorithm similar to the big, large social media platforms. Prime example, in my work as a social listening expert, I've spent the last close to 2 decades working on the back end, analyzing numbers of if a beauty brand had influencers that they partnered with and they pushed a specific product, say the lipstick, how did that perform on the various media platforms? One thing that we've realized over the years, I think as consumers and also myself as an expert, is that a lot of these apps are pushing specific algorithms that they have on the back end, pre-programmed, in terms of who their content goes out to, but also how limited it gets distributed.
That's right.
So hearing what MusicSoul is going to do, which again, in my opinion, sounds like you're going to completely change the streaming space for both brands and consumers, is fascinating to hear, just because as someone who's seen algorithms in and out change over the decades in social media, that's actually very empowering to the end user.
Completely empowering. I mean, to think, you know, why would they limit your reach? You know, people currently work so hard to get followers and, you know, get their message out. Why in the world would they want to limit that for
that? That is because big platforms are trying to push advertising, right? So the whole idea is that someone, as an emerging artist, again, I sympathize for artists, because I'm scared that true art might go away with the penetration of AI. So why are these big companies trying to limit reach? Because they're trying to get more advertising. Advertising doesn't just come from these brands, right?
But I'll tell you right now, don't you think that advertising is not about necessarily limiting reach, which is why the biggest companies in the world buy the Super Bowl ads? It's because it's the curation. And that distinction is so important. The curation of the eyeballs is the thing. It's not how many people you're reaching. Should be able to reach as many people as possible. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to be interested in what you're doing. So having the curation built into the system, that is the secret sauce. And nobody's even thinking of it.
That was actually going to be my next question, just because it seems like you have thought of MusicSoul from every single angle, from the AI and product angle, meaning how you create it and how you really draw the attention of the consumers and the brands to come on, and then how you actually push messaging out or push their content out equally. And again, thinking from the technology standpoint, you've also thought of a multi-billion-dollar idea, especially after having read those statistics, about how much money just the music industry has generated. And it seems like you have thought of every single angle of MusicSoul. How did you even come up with it?
Well, thanks for saying all that. That really feels good, and I very much appreciate that. So thank you. I thought of it because I lived it. I watched the process of Lady Gaga starting as a completely unknown artist and being built brick by brick through all of the different processes, and I know each of the steps. So how can those steps be automated and digitized? And so that's what I did. I worked with my business partner to digitize those processes. Okay, so as an example, touring is huge for all artists, not just Lady Gaga, but for any artist, touring is huge. And how artists really, and how the record labels do it, is they have, an opening act for a much larger act who might be on a stadium tour. So the opening act gets exposed to an audience who would have a similar following, and so that they get that exposure. So I said to myself, how can I create digital touring? So digital touring, I can do that through AI. But how am I going to do that? I flipped the script by having the brands do the distribution. So for example, TikTok, they, when they were starting out, it has been told to me that TikTok purchased followers, users, the user acquisition. But I said, how can I make the user acquisition cost zero? Well, I can tell the brands, here is something where you're going to understand the customer journey. You're going to have detailed data on what is interesting and what generates a sale, and the, what buyers, what things trigger, what events trigger which outcomes. And so because of that, and because the brands are currently having trouble with their current advertising models, because television is changing and it's turning to streaming and whatnot, this becomes something that's so useful to them that they said, okay, we will do the distribution for you. We will push this out. So as a hypothetical example, let's say we were doing, something with Estee Lauder as just a hypothetical example. We could have Estee Lauder say, hop onto MusicSoul, enter your zip code for a chance to receive a makeover and a meet and greet backstage with Beyonce on her tour. And Estee Lauder could have multiple winners at each stop on Beyonce's tour that we would put that together for them. They would get a makeover, and then in the comments it might be like, oh my goodness, I love how your makeup looked backstage at Beyonce, and then they could just close that loop by clicking the button, having Estee Lauder's digital storefront within MusicSoul, because we are a marketplace, and click on the video and all the contents would be put into your shopping cart and sent to your home.
Wow.
So it's not only just something that you see on TV, then you got to go search for it, then you got to do, or, even on Instagram where it's like click link in bio, go to the next site, search for it, it's like 5 clicks till it's in your cart. Here, it's like 1 click purchasing where it's on the video itself. You can click on the video, all the contents are put into your cart, sent to your home.
Wow. So you guys will have integrations with the brands directly. So from the user experience, is it fair to say that that's my one-stop shop to do pretty much everything?
Everything.
So why would I then leave the app?
Well, you wouldn't, especially because you're getting paid for things that you're currently doing for free.
That was actually going to be the next question. Why would I leave the app to even consider working or doing any type of other activity than basically trying to establish myself on the app as a curator, creator, whatever profession that is? I mean, that sounds completely astonishing.
It's awesome. And I'll tell you, listen, just like right now, there's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, they all pretty much do the same thing, right? It will be one more app. It's not exclusive. It doesn't cost you anything. There is a premium subscription for $9.99 per month, which is very, very affordable if you choose to do that. But 80% of the functionality is free anyway. So we're going to
You're monetizing back. So that subscription is right away. You're almost getting your money back.
Yep. And on top of it, yes, there are so many ways to monetize on the platform. It's crazy. And, you could go to concerts, you can go into the metaverse, you can watch podcasts, you can listen to any song you want, you can watch movies, TV, you can make dinner reservations or travel reservations or have VIP experiences or contests. I mean, there are a million things to do. You can contribute to causes. We're very, very purpose-driven at MusicSoul. I was inducted into the United Nations Council of Global Change this past year. And, I spoke with the people at the UN. I said, this is an incredible opportunity to upload your educational videos to MusicSoul in the causes section, where through our data matching system, our AI can match maybe the Council of Women underneath the UN with hypothetically L'Oreal. So it might be 100 million eyeballs from the UN, 250 million from L'Oreal, put them together, and whatever that video could capture and keep, they would retain 70% of streaming and advertising revenue for this good cause that the UN could use for whatever purpose they needed to. And so we can actually create great change in the world. There's also a section around inspiration, so that it can show you which artists and celebrities are engaging with which causes and supporting which causes. So that if someone's going through, for example, bullying at school, you can find out that Adam Levine is interested in anti-bullying and hear it from one of your heroes instead of something which is not anonymous, which, this is a way that you can get the help you need, and it can link out to those charities and causes and can be a part of your life in the moments when you need it.
Wow, that's absolutely inspiring. Again, I didn't realize that institutions and nonprofit organizations could really also join, but it does make sense that if the consumers or the users themselves at the end of their month, once they've amassed their profits, obviously, or the money that they've made on the app, that they could actually go up and donate it to a cause. That's
well, not only they can certainly donate it, but again, without people donating, it's baked into our system that we just give 70% of our gross revenue to the user. And so if that user's, again, supporting a cause or promoting a cause, if that user is promoting a makeup line or a fashion line or their artwork or their song, whatever it is, we support, we are creating pop culture. And we're paying people to live an inspired life for things that they're currently doing for free.
That's so amazing. And will the app be available worldwide, or how can
worldwide? It will be available worldwide. Can't wait. So it will be happening later this year.
I'm very excited for you.
Thank you.
You actually touched on several key points that I had prepared for and I wanted to talk about, because again, I'm always trying to figure out what's the signal. I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, I always say that there are signals in the world. They're in the environment around you. You walk down the street and you can get a big sign or a signal or a moment. In your journey, how did you come to basically the conclusion that the world is ready and ripe for something like this? And this actually is very tied to the AI piece. I know we started off with like the question of AI and how will AI interact. So as an artist, you have discovered before the algorithms, one of the most famous celebrities and musical artists of all times. How do you read signals before algorithms, and how are we going to kind of like transition into the next era of now we're in apps, right? What would you say on that?
I would say that there are certain things to me that are obvious. It doesn't matter whether you're an artist, a business person, a charity, every single human being who is trying to launch a business or launch a charity or launch their music career or launch whatever career they're going to have, they need three things. They need discovery. Who's going to find me? How are they going to find me? They need curated, data-driven mass promotion, so that it's not only mass promotion, lots of eyeballs, but the correct eyeballs on your content. And then they need monetization. So if you've got all these eyeballs, let's say, for example, on Spotify, you can have 1 billion streams and make less than $45,000. So who cares if you've got all of the promotion, because you're not making enough money to live a life where you're not stressed out. So we want to create something that is inspiring to people, where if they're unhappy at their desk job, they have the ability to leave and put their effort and energy into creative pursuits. And so this gives people the ability to do that. So what's the signal? That people are unhappy. That's the signal. The signal that people are so concerned about their outward statistics. We have no followers on MusicSoul because we don't think that Picasso's better than Monet because he has more followers. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And a lot of the decisions that are happening at the record labels happen based on how many streams you have on Spotify, how many followers you have on Instagram. It's like, who cares? That's your job. Provide people with the audience. provide them with a curated audience and see if they thrive or see if they fall. And half of our algorithm has to do with the amount of effort you give to your fan base. So if you're just somebody who never engages with your fan base, you might have lots of songs, but you're not going to kind of level up. We give 50% of our algorithm to people who are putting in effort to their fan base, and the other 50 based on popularity and things like that. But it's something where we want to spread this out as far and wide as possible so that people can get the attention they need and the curated attention, and then pay them for it. That's what everybody needs. And people need to feel secure in life. That is really what it comes down to. As an analogy, if I'm sitting there, drowning in an ocean and, paddling to survive, you're not judging me on my backstroke, you know what I mean? On how beautiful my stroke is. And that is exactly what's happening. Artists are struggling to pay rent. They're struggling to survive and then being judged on how great they are. How, the A&R guys at a lot of the labels are forced to sign a lot of copycat acts. And what I mean by that is, who is the last big artist? Let's sign someone that sounds like that. Because the music industry is dwindling and people are losing their jobs left and right. So, of course, they're put in a position of lack. And we don't want to give that to creatives. We want them to say, you know what? I know I can feed myself. I know I can feed my family. I know I can pay my rent. And so now what's about to happen is I'm going to create art that is completely, it's going to be a creative renaissance that happens from this sense of security that artists are given.
As you said earlier, brands in the last few years, especially, I think we've seen it post-COVID, are very much struggling with the attention of the user. So MusicSoul sounds to me, and it's maybe a question, is it fair to say that MusicSoul is going to also help brands in the way that they distribute content and find new users, and also how they generate new revenue streams? Because it sounded like it's a twofold app. Obviously, the consumer side, which is absolutely incredible and really beneficial for the users themselves. And then the brand side, which is more of that revolution towards streaming and moving away from the way that we consume media right now. What would it look like if you're on a brand side? So say I'm a brand marketer, those are the people that I work with mostly. How would it help them?
That was the origin story of MusicSoul. Aris, my business partner, was speaking with the chief marketing officer of a humongous Fortune 100 brand who said, my traditional means of advertising is no longer working for me. There are no commercials on Netflix or Apple TV. And a logo slap or banner ad on digital or social media is no one's engaging with it anymore. What can you do? Can you create us something in music? Because everyone will engage with music regardless of whether or not my brand is there. And we can make it fun and interesting where people aren't forced to sit through a 30-second commercial that they're just going to hit the skip button anyway. Make it authentically fun and interesting. And so MusicSoul can capture the data of the customer journey of, wow, we saw what the response was when there were all of these winners who received makeovers and then got to meet their favorite celebrity backstage. And this amount of people clicked on the video to purchase everything that the winner had received in their makeover, all of the products. Things along those lines where it results not only in just the advertisement, but the actual sale, the click-through rate to those things. And understanding the customer journey in general. Who are the right partners? Who are the right influencers that are actually going to move the needle for that brand? Maybe there's certain experiences or other brands. Maybe there's a restaurant brand with a, home goods brand where there's plates and silverware in the restaurant or lighting, or, there are all kinds of cross-promotional opportunities that happen between brands all the time. And they haven't had a place to live together and create those connections that will result in more sales for them. And now they'll have extremely detailed data on what is inspiring the customer to interact and engage with them.
That's amazing. I love the idea that you're matching also and pairing different both audiences. So from brand side, you're pairing them with a completely different audience that they may never get access to prior. I think from what I've seen in the last years working in social media and also TV media measurement and OTT media and streaming has been that brands are struggling with appealing to mass audiences, but they're also struggling with appealing to very niche audiences. And as you said earlier, the factor of likes and engagement and how many followers you have, it also works two ways for brands as well, because many brands right now fear and struggle with the engagement of existing audiences on social media. And again, on advertising TV, like they just can't seem to convert those audiences. So I found it very interesting that you have found this almost formula which matches both the customer and the brand and helps with that.
One of the things I wanted to comment on that is, again, it comes back to curation. People are not realizing when there are mass audiences that you're trying to appeal to, you have got to start with the curated ones that are the low-hanging fruit, and then it expands out, expands out, expands out. So with Lady Gaga's name as an example, we said, okay, let's dress her up in a very flamboyant kind of way. Who dresses like this? Well, the drag queens in the gay community dress in these flamboyant outfits, and it's full of life and passion and wonderful. Okay, who are some of the gay icons? Freddie Mercury of the band Queen. Okay, what's one of their big songs? All right, well, it's Radio Gaga, but it's not a radio, it's a lady. So Lady Gaga. Here's the new name. And so basically we said, okay, let's start appealing to the gay community. Let's say, let's have her perform in lots of gay clubs. Let's then from the gay community went to the fashion community, because the gay community is very fashionable. We love that. And so from the gay community to the fashion community to the housewives that are reading the fashion magazines, from the housewives to their husbands, and so on. And so you start here, and like concentric circles out, you can figure out how to reach a mass audience until Lady Gaga was worldwide. And these are the same principles that are applied within MusicSoul, because we have brands that represent various different, not only communities, but we have the AI that can analyze those communities and sort them for you, and can do all that heavy lifting and work where no other platform is thought to use AI in this way, to my knowledge.
My last question really goes back to, out of all the hats that you're wearing, you are a musician, music writer, you're an embellished and awarded human, and you're an entrepreneur. Is there a hat that you like wearing the most?
I'd say in my soul, I feel like I'm a songwriter, but everyone asks me, Wendy, when are you going to get back in the studio and start, working with your next artist or doing your own stuff? And I said, why would I go back into the studio when great performance no longer equals great reward? And that's what we're seeing in the music industry. And so, when Snoop goes out there and says, I got 1 billion streams and made less than $45,000, what is the point of trying to break another artist and make them famous if they can't feed themselves? And so my biggest passion right now is getting MusicSoul launched to fix a broken system where people can actually, and it's going to be great also for the record labels, because the record labels will have the ability to vet artists. Only upon the artist's approval will the record labels be able to see their statistics and say, oh, wow, instead of I throw $1 million at a song and see if it sticks to the wall, now I have this vetting system to say, this song at scale with 250 million eyeballs went straight up the charts. And this is incredible data and information for record labels who can then make really great investments. They can see how artists are doing and catch them at early stages and invest in great talent and not have to be as structured with the types of artists that they're doing, that they don't have to only do what's popular, because they'll see these kind of left of center type of artists really rising who are unique and original. And that's how culture is going to unfold in a really marvelous and unique way that will appeal to so many different types of people. And we won't hear carbon copy artists as much anymore.
Thank you so much for the time today.
Thanks for having me.